by a helping hand and not an iron fist. And that's why I have made fighting global hunger a strong part of our legislative agenda. The first piece of legislation that I co-authored played a significant role in helping with these efforts. It was the Hyde-Lantos HIV/AIDS bill. And this legislation, friends, authorizes the United States of America to spend $50 billion in combating the spread of HIV/AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis in poor and developing countries. I offered an important amendment to the Hyde-Lantos bill that passed with broad bipartisan support. This amendment, which is now law, mandates that American universities and African universities partner together on the best strategies for preventing HIV/AIDS on the African continent. My amendment will essentially create additional programs that mirror the successful IU Kenya program, in which our friend Fran Quigley is so vital to. I have also played a proactive role in seeking help to those countries adversely impacted by the global food crisis. Over 20 food riots have erupted around the world this year, mostly in developing countries. Unfortunately, death has resulted during these occurrences. No country, as I mentioned earlier, has been more adversely affected by the global food crisis than Haiti. Haiti is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. The current food crisis has caused that country to become unstable and volatile. The Prime Minister was forced to resign as a result of the crisis, and crime has remained alarmingly high. So I took it upon myself, with other members of Congress, to visit Haiti to see firsthand how the food crisis has destabilized that country. And the images of what I saw and encountered were daunting. I heard stories of families forced to continuously send their children to bed hungry. I heard how malnourished children were unable to combat infectious diseases because their immune systems were too weak. So to better assist Haiti, I joined several of my colleagues in sending a letter to the Bush administration calling on them to increase food assistance to Haiti. Furthermore, I co-sponsored legislation that gives temporary protective immigration status to all Haitians who come to the United States of America as a result of the existing food crisis. But beyond fighting infectious diseases and the global food crisis, I have also made debt relief of poor countries one of my top priorities. By relieving the debts of the world's poorest countries, we can allow them to use more of their limited resources to fight poverty. That's why we've been a strong supporter for the passage of legislation that will eliminate the debts of 24 of the world's poorest countries. Reforming our trade agreements with developing nations has also been a top priority of ours. Oftentimes our trade deals favor the large agribusinesses over small and individual businesses, as well as the individual farmer. Such policies reward the rich and punish the poor. Parity must be incorporated into our trade policies. Until parity is included in our trade policies, we will continue to vote against trade deals such as the Colombia Free Trade Agreement and others that fail to prioritize the needs of the working poor. One of my dearest colleagues in the House of Representatives is House Majority Leader Jim Clyburn, and he and I are part of an organization known as the Democratic Faith Working Group. It's a group consisting of Christians, Jews, Muslims, Hindus, and so forth. And at one of the recent forums, we discussed ways to combat poverty. And during that discussion, it was mentioned that the eradication of poverty was the most authentic way of doing what God requires of us, those who are adherents to the Abrahamic faith and other faith traditions. Because it isn't enough to talk about the poor, the hungry, or the needy. We as a people of faith are charged to do more, and our work won't be complete until we adhere to the principles that we speak of in our faith systems. So fighting global poverty is not just the right thing to do, but it is the morally right thing to do. Please be assured, friends, that I will continue to make the eradication of poverty one of my top duties as your representative in Congress, because I believe America's greatest days lie ahead. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carson. I believe we have time for one question at this point from the audience. Yes, if you'll please stand and say it very loudly.
I really do appreciate your position on the global hunger issues. the U.S. is the wealthiest country in the world, but we still have 35 million people who worry about having enough food on the table. And that number is only going to get worse with our current economic struggles. Congress has just recently decided to spend $7 billion to help the financial companies on Wall Street. In fiscal year 2007, I think we spent $30 billion on food stamps, and that's less than 5% of what we're now talking about the aid that we're offering to Wall Street. How much do you think is enough? I agree with you that we have good programs,
sure,
but how much funding is enough, especially given our current economic times?
Excellent point. First, I think we need to have adequate funding for our food stamp programs, to your point. I also think that we should extend unemployment benefits for displaced American workers. Americans are being laid off every day. In fact, since January, we've now exceeded 100,000 Americans who have been laid off. 20,000 of those Americans, unfortunately, are Hoosiers. Also, I think we need to work to bring more federal dollars here at the grassroots, local level. We've done these kinds of things with the Bonner Center and other efforts here in our country. You know, it's one thing to talk about eradicating poverty, but I think the wealthiest nation in the world should provide her citizenry with a universal health care system first. But also, we should be the example in dealing with the 35 million fellow citizens that you mentioned earlier. It's unfortunate. I mean, we're all across the world, thank God for that, but we can't be the world leader we desire to be unless we first take care of our own. It's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment as a nation. It's an embarrassment as a proud American to see where we're spread thin, literally spread thin. No one else is helping carry the weight, quite frankly, in a significant way. We're spread thin, and we aren't taking care of the least of these right here in America. So.
Thank you very much. We now turn to Ms. Campo, if you will share with us your response.